The Philadelphia Eagles head into New Orleans on a short week in a face-off with the Red Hot Saints. The Saints' offense is top 3 in almost every major statistical category, while the Eagles' defense is one of the worst in the league. The Saints' defense is no slouch either, as they're top 10 in almost every major statistical category as well, and the offense is likely going to be without A.J. Brown. So, do the Eagles stand a chance? Welcome to the Philly Film Room podcast. Along with Eric Sidewater, I'm Nick Waters, and we're going to be discussing everything Saints-Eagles. But before we get to that, I want to bring in my co-host Eric and get his game thoughts on our Week 2 matchup with the Falcons. Eric, what did you think of that horrible loss that we just had?
Well, I think you said it yourself. It was a heartbreaking loss. Took me a little while to get over it. Anyone you can second guess the decision making at the end of the game. And in fact, if you want to see some number crunching on that, you can check out my Twitter. I ran some simulations on what was the optimal decision. Sneak peek, Sirianni was not correct. But
shocker.
Ultimately, yeah, the thing that I was most concerned with, like most Eagles fans, was the lack of pass rush, because that's something that, if it sticks around, is pretty much going to prevent them from being a competitive playoff team. And so, to me, that's what my attention is on going forward. A lot of the other stuff, as you mentioned in your review, can be cleaned up, especially if getting A.J. Brown back. I mean, that offense, to me, is clearly a top 10 unit. No problem. Just roll them out there. And even if they make mistakes, they're just too talented not to score points. I'm not worried about the offense as long as they are healthy. And then the other thing, obviously, it was the run defense. It's maybe they have a chance that it's easier to patch up than pass rush. That's just my feeling about it. You have the ability to change up your fronts, you change your techniques. So I'm just curious. We talked about it in the offseason. We expect the defense to get progressively better throughout the season. We knew that there would be hiccups early on. How long will it take till they get rolling? Nobody knows. We don't have a crystal ball, but I'm hoping by the time it's like right after the bye week, they start to hit their stride. So, yeah, tough loss, but everyone else who matters in the NFC also lost. So we didn't gain ground. We didn't lose ground. So we just got to get better.
Yeah, everyone else that matters, but when you start to look into the future, this Saints team might be one of those teams that matters. They're absolutely red hot coming into this matchup. So let's jump into this to this preview and see, is it going to get any easier for this pass rush? And just a little foreshadowing, the answer is no. But looking at this offense, they're led by first-time offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak, who was previously the 49ers pass game coordinator. They're quarterbacked by longtime veteran Derek Carr and headlined by names like Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. They're first in points per game, third in yards per game, first in EPA per play, first in yards per play, first in passing yards per play, and for some reason, they're really bad at running the ball, as they're 11th in yards per carry. So, Eric, what did you see on film from this Saints offense? Why are they so good?
Yeah, so Klint Kubiak is a really impressive coordinator. And for people who haven't seen the Saints play, you can kind of think of the Kyle Shanahan style approach. A lot of under center, a lot of outside zone, and then they're using play action passes to push the ball down the field off of those run plays. And they've been very effective. Their line is a well-oiled machine, and they play with their hair on fire, getting up to the second level, washing linebackers out of the play. The main difference I see between them and San Francisco is they're not quite using as much diversity in their formations as Shanahan does, but they definitely are mixing up their personnel packages. In fact, only 22% of their snaps came in 11 personnel. That's one running back, one tight end. And that's the lowest in the NFL. So, Kubiak maybe is a little bit more of a straightforward approach than Shanahan, but then you throw in these guys like Taysom Hill and Prentice, who are these hybrid fullback tight ends. it can be quite a puzzle for the defense to unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've faced a Shanahan or McVay offense in every game so far this year. It's a lot of the stuff you're going to see is stuff that's very similar to what we've seen already from previous offenses. They kind of just switch different parts based on what their roster is best at. So, and you see that same thing with the Saints offense. It is interesting to watch the different systems that kind of stem from the same tree and see how they develop and grow throughout the league. So it is interesting to watch. Talking about their scheme a little bit more though, play action is their bread and butter so far through 2 weeks in this young season. They were first in the league and percentage of their dropbacks that were play action at 45%. That also means conversely, they're last in the league in the percentage of their dropbacks that are non-play action plays. And why is that huge? Because like we've been dealing with the first 2 weeks of the season with the pass rush, it's probably going to be a tough game for this pass rush because they're having to play run first and then transition into a pass rush after they've already engaged with the offensive linemen. So you get flow one way, defensive linemen get engaged. But then you look at what they do to keep their quarterback clean, right? So they already do the high play action rate, but they have the lowest routes run per dropback in the NFL. What that means is they keep the most players in to help block out of any team in the NFL. And when you watch what was happening last week with the Cowboys and with Micah Parsons, they were very exotic in their scheme and sending multiple guys at Micah Parsons, but a lot of times it was a running back and a tight end that they double team him with. And then their other 5 offensive linemen are blocking the 3 remaining defensive linemen. And then outside of that, once you do get them into non-play action passes, they have the 3rd fastest time to throw. So they run a ton of play action to protect their offensive line. They keep a bunch of guys in to help in protection. And then when they run drop back, they get the ball out of Derek Carr's hands quick. So if people are thinking, like, this is going to be another rough week for Bryce Huff, if people are thinking this pass rush is going to rebound this week, it's not happening. I'm sorry to hear to say that to you guys, but it's just unfortunate about that. I do want to mention 2 other things real quick. This offense is really funneled through 3 people, Kamara, Olave, and Shaheed. And you mentioned it. They with their motion, their play action, and their eye candy, they manipulate second level defenders all the time and throw right behind them. And they also take deep shots off of that. They're an explosive offense. So it's going to be a tough matchup, that's for sure. Did you have any? What are your thoughts on slowing them down? Is there anything you think this defense can do to kind of stymie the Saints attack?
Yeah, and just to build off what you mentioned, they completely neutralized the Cowboys. The Cowboys had 17 quarterback hits in week 1, which is an insane number. Against the Saints, they had 1. So teams are countering the Saints with base personnel. In fact, they face the highest percentage of base personnel in the NFL. So you're just thinking about 4 defensive backs on the field, heavier defensive package out there. It hasn't been that effective, but it's definitely not allowing them to get to the quarterback. In terms of what I would do to counter them, I think it's absolutely integral for the Eagles to keep the Saints in as many true passing downs as possible. They're getting down the field on 1st and 2nd down. If it's 3rd down, it's a lot of times it's very short yardage, so they can run or pass. And if they get the lead, now you're in deep trouble because they can lean on that run game, and then you start to bring 8 guys in the box, and then they can dice you up with the play action. They'll need to neutralize their heavy personnel package, like play action game, by keeping them in longer down and distances. When you can force them into 11 personnel, I don't even know who their 3rd receiver is. Some nobody. And that's when you can have the ability to rush the passer. I agree with you. I don't think it will be a good pressure game, good sack game. But if you can get them in some key 3rd and longs, and then you can get some pressures, that's been Derek Carr's bugaboo throughout his career. Against these traditional drop back passing plays, he's not good against pressure. I don't see any reason that would change this year. But you have to, like Fangio said, you have to earn your right to rush the passer. And so, as it looks, they're going to have a heck of a time trying to get them into those situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you look at this offense and actually getting him into long down and distance situations, where's it going to come from? It's hard to see how you're going to have to stop him on the ground and with your run defense, but that's probably not happening for the Eagles, right? And then you look at the rest of their offense. They're 7th in sack rate. They're 3rd in completion percentage. So you're not really getting a bunch of passes that drop and hit the ground, and you get 0 yards off of those plays to put them behind the sticks, right? So if they're also 3rd in stuff rate when they do run the ball, right? So if they're not taking negative plays, they're not getting behind the sticks. It is hard to beat a Shanahan style offense if you're never putting them behind the sticks. And just to illustrate this point, this is only a sample size of 4, so it's very small. But I've said this with pretty much every Shanahan offense I've covered going back to last year. When you get these guys to drop back longer down in distances, they struggle compared to other offenses. Derek Carr this year, there's only been 4 instances, 3rd and 7 plus, 1 of 4 this year. You got to get them into long down and distance situations. How do you do that? My thoughts on this, stopping this offense, you have to minimize your defenders that have run or pass conflicts in the run game. Take away spots on the field in the passing game. This is a team they're not really, they're using the play action and the motion and everything to throw to spots on the field, not necessarily trying to create and open up windows based off of their route combination. It's more so the run action and the motions that helps to open up spots on the field. So minimize run pass conflicts for your defenders, and then take away spots on the field that the Saints like to throw to, because they target certain spots on the field over and over. How do you do this? Well, to help, first you mentioned it, match their personnel with our base, especially on early downs. They will. You mentioned their formational tendencies aren't as diverse as the 49ers. Part of that probably is the fact that this is only their 3rd game with this coordinator. That will grow. And we started to see situations where Kamara is getting lined up at wide receiver. You got Shaheed at running back. That will continue to grow. And so you can't go 2nd and long and come out in base personnel. They're going to line up and spread most likely. I would match in base personnel, but I would also run coverages where my flat defenders are also the edge rushers. It helps with the play actions and the rollouts. And then I'd utilize spot drop principles. And I think the reason we're seeing this increase in spot drop principles across the league right now is because of this increase in the Shanahan and McVay style offenses. Because they're trying to throw to spots on the field, not necessarily use their route combinations to open things up like we see from spread offenses that were then matched by match coverages. And then the last thing I'll say is place a safety and a robber technique. And how can you achieve this? You can achieve this playing cover 1 and having your safety play a robber technique. But you can also achieve this with cover 3 buzz, where your safety is dropping down. Instead of rotating to the flat, they rotate to as a hook defender, or play cover 8. Your backside safety often ends up as a free roamer over the middle of the field. It can help take away some of those crossing routes that the Saints offense likes to utilize. Now, looking at offensive matchups, we touched on him a little bit. I don't have a whole lot to add to Derek Carr that you haven't already said, but he is playing well. He had a few inaccurate passes in his first 2 games, but he's been good overall. You mentioned him not being very good when he's been under pressure. He's actually been one of the better quarterbacks throughout his career when he's been kept clean. And he was 6th in quarterback rating in 2023 when not pressured. He is being kept clean, and that's why the Saints offense is rolling right now. So I expect that to continue on Sunday, unfortunately, but you never know. Maybe we get a Derek Carr stinker. Did you have any other thoughts to add about Carr?
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to throw in about Kubiak is on film, his play sequencing is a masterclass. They'll come out, they'll run wide zone and gash you. Then they'll come back and run jet sweep the other direction. Then they'll run a play action Yankee concept where they have a deep crosser paired with the post. Like you mentioned, just throwing 2 guys out there on routes and still being effective. People said that's not possible in the modern NFL, and we're seeing it because they have some speed demons out there. Then they'll throw up top. They literally threw a post over the top of a 2-high shell. Then they'll do a fake jet sweep, and they'll throw a tight end throwback across at like this Y leak play. And I went and looked, and the way they ran it was literally identical to like a 1990s diagram I looked up. And so it kind of goes to show you, it's like play sequencing, execution, and the personnel, that amounts to a lot more than like having some fancy play to trick the defense, or like having some amazing scheme. It's like ultimately it's how do you run it, and when do you do it, which foreshadowing, I think that was one of the problems with the Eagles offense. So yeah, in terms of Carr, real quickly, I watched his video with Gruden, and this may be lip service, but I kind of put some weight on it, which is he said he really went back to his college strength regimen. He working out with like a chip on his shoulder, working on his footwork, because people were kind of out on this guy. They don't think he was a very good quarterback, and I believe him when he says like I'm really looking to reestablish myself, and we've seen it now early in the season that he looks better. So yeah, I think Carr is a legitimate quarterback, especially when you put him in positions to succeed like Kubiak has.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a good thing, a good point about Carr is that a lot of people were out on him. It's just what happens in the NFL when you show that you're not going to be a top 10 or top 5 quarterback. Once you start getting to that late 20s, early 30s, you kind of start getting, recycled or forgotten about, and people are looking for the next best thing. I feel like that's what's happened with Derek Carr. He's not a bad quarterback. He's probably an average quarterback in the NFL, but if you can keep him clean, like what Kubiak's doing, and giving him easy answers, I mean, it's just money for them. Now, moving on to running back, we have Alvin Kamara, who I don't think needs too much introduction. I feel like most people know who he is, but I think a lot of people were seeing some decline in his production over the past couple of years. Well, he's off to a hot start to start this year, and I really think that Alvin Kamara is going to have that CMC effect for this offense. When you think about Kubiak coming from the 49ers to the Saints, what CMC is good at, what Kamara is good at, he is going to be a league winner in fantasy, especially where he is probably getting drafted at, and especially seeing how he's been utilized and that his efficiency numbers are going to go back up again. It's just he is a scary threat facing this offense. He's tied for 6th in the NFL in rushing yards. He's tied for the most 10-plus yard runs in the NFL. He's 14th in rush yards over expectation. He's 3rd in success rate per rush and 3rd in receiving yards. So he's going to be utilized in a bunch of different ways. They will line him out at receiver. They will line him up in the slot and throw screens to him. They're going to utilize him a bunch of different ways. And think about how you've seen CMC utilized with the 49ers for the past several years. That's how Kamara is going to continue to grow into and be used with this Kubiak offense. What did you think about Kamara?
It's unbelievable, because if you watch like the 2 previous years, injury riddled years, he was a shell of himself, and he's completely back. His burst is back. In fact, I remember him being like decently fast, but his top end speed was like mediocre, and even back thinking about his prime. And then I watched this long screen pass he caught against the Cowboys, and guys are taking terrible angles on him, and he's just dusting them. The main thing I would talk about him is, yeah, in a straight line, he's pretty fast, but not elite. But it's really what I like to call turn of foot, or his angling ability, which is kind of as he's turning the corner, he's completely at full speed, whereas other guys have to kind of like get their footing, so they can't quite stay at full speed. Unbelievable contact balance, probably one of the best in history. It's that good. Soft hands. He's like a legit receiving threat, like you mentioned. McCaffrey, probably my favorite back to watch in the NFL. It's just amazing watching him, and I don't think the Eagles are going to slow him down, to be honest. How about you?
No, I mean, I'd be taking the overs on pretty much all of his props on Sunday. Although I will say I'm not an over better, because injuries happen too much in football, especially at running back. Now, moving on to receiver. This offense is really funneled through 3 people. One of them's Kamara and the passing game. The other 2 are Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. We'll talk about Olave first. A lot of people know who he is already. He was a former first round pick a couple years ago. He is a smooth and speedy wide receiver. Sometimes you get one or the other, but he is both. He wins at all three levels and is a great route runner. He has good tracking ability and is a fearless jump ball contestant. So much so that he's had like a number of injuries where he's just straight up landed on his head like several times. He has zero regard for his body. He's currently 16th in yards per route run, and I could see that number honestly going up. I'll tie in Shaheed real quick right here. Rashid Shaheed. I think this guy is going to be a league winner. If you play fantasy football, go out and get Shaheed right now because you can probably get him cheaper than what he is going to end up at the end of the year. When you look at how he's being utilized in this offense and you look at the fact that they really aren't using other people in this offense, it's pretty much Olave, Kamara, and Shaheed. And Shaheed is playing really well. Before he was just a deep threat. And now he's being utilized all over the field. Right? So if you get that efficiency you see from Shanahan offenses, and then you see Shaheed with 100 targets, the guy is going to outperform wherever he was drafted at. Now, the problem is right now he's had a hot start to the year where he's put up big play touchdowns back-to-back weeks, but he's only had 9 targets. So I would go to my league mates and say, hey, the guy's only had 9 targets. He gets 4.5 targets a game. You can't sustain this success. When they're not blowing teams out, he's going to get a lot more targets and he's going to get some yards. I'll touch on him a little bit more. He's a deep threat. He's fast. He's not Tyreek Hill fast, though. What he is good at is he's good running deep routes with his stems and his work at the break point. And he's good at tracking the ball in the air as well. He's 4th in air yards per target currently this year. Although that number is going to come down as he's used more throughout the year. He does get utilized underneath. He leads the NFL in yards per route run currently, and he's a shifty, legitimate threat with the ball in his hands. It's perfect for this offense. They use him like they use Debo for the 49ers. So he's going to be used in so many different ways that he has a high floor and a high ceiling. So I would go and get Shaheed on your team. But what do you think about these receivers, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, Olave, he's just my cup of tea. Amazing route runner, extremely smooth in and out of his breaks. One of the best at the top of his stem in the entire NFL. And he'll go up, like you mentioned, he'll go up in traffic. He's got a huge catch radius that you wouldn't necessarily know based off his measurables, which I remember people were comping Lad McConkey to him in the pre-draft process, which I thought was laughable. I mean, this guy is playing on the line of scrimmage outside and winning down the field. I'm personally guaranteeing he'll catch like a 15 to 20 yard dig route against the Eagles off of play action. And one of the indictments against his game previously was that he was really bad after the catch. But a lot of that, as Matt Harmon of Reception Perception noted, is the nature of the balls you're catching. If you're catching fade routes down the sideline, of course you're not going to get yards after catch. But now you're catching it in stride over the middle. I think he's leading the league on in breaking routes, running tons of slants and ins. So it's already materializing into more yards after catch. Obviously, he's not ultra shifty or that physical, but he's fast. So yeah, he's a really good receiver. And then Shaheed, I mean, I think people who, diehard football fans started to key on him last year. And yeah, you're right. He's not quite Tyreek Hill's speed, but he's not far off. He's in that Jameson Williams tier of speed. I think he might be leading the league in percentage of routes run that are vertical, 30-something%. As you mentioned, he is a true deep threat, but he is more versatile, as you also mentioned. They'll repeatedly put him on jet sweeps or just jet motions where they're just using him as eye candy. Well, you have to respect it. And the way the Saints run it, it materializes very quickly. It's not like you have all day to see this guy coming. He'll just be shot out of a cannon and get the ball before your guys have even moved out of their stance. Very dynamic. And in fact, they even did a straight up toss play to him as a running back out of like I formation.
He's their Debo. He
Yeah.
is their Debo in this offense.
So, he doesn't have nearly the play strength or bulk of Debo, but he has a lot more speed. So
Right.
he's someone that is scary. Now, there's one saving grace potentially, which is the two outside corners that the Eagles will be trotting out there have really good long speed. That now, here's the question: if they are running some kind of match coverage and they pass off a post to Blankenship, watch out.
Moving on to some of the other guys on this offense, we do have to mention Taysom Hill. He will line up everywhere, and I mean everywhere for this offense, and it will continue to grow as this offense grows. But he will line up in line. He will line up wide. He will line up in the slot. He'll line up as a fullback. He'll line up as a running back. He'll line up as a quarterback in a standard offense, and then he'll line up as a wildcat quarterback, where it's clear that they're kind of gearing up to use him as a downhill power runner. So and he will block as well. He's not just out there as a decoy. And when I watch him play now, in my mind, it's like, man, this could have been like what Tim Tebow was if he just would have accepted that he wasn't NFL caliber quarterback, you know. But that's a different topic for a different day. Moving on to the offensive line, I'm not going to touch on everyone here individually because of this scheme, really, because this is a scheme that works together. They don't get put in situations where you can really isolate them a whole lot. You have to win on rundowns. And the problem is this team is really good in the run game. They are excellent firing off the ball and running their zone scheme as a cohesive and athletic unit. So they will run you off the ball like we saw last week with the Falcons and their athletic offensive line. I'm a little worried, but I will say what happened last week, I'm sure the coaches are harping and going over this over and over and making sure they're getting their issues that they had taken care of. Will it come to fruition and work out? I don't know. But looking in the pass game at this offensive line, if you can get them into drop back protection like we have been talking about, you can get some of these guys. Like Trevor Penning at right tackle, he's 61st in pressure rate allowed in 2023. He got beat pretty bad against the Saints, but the ball was out quick. Lucas Patrick, I think he's a better run blocker than pass blocker, but he's a veteran journeyman as an offensive lineman, has switched between guard and center. He's a guard now. He's 29th out of 38th, out of 38 centers and pressure rate allowed last year. But can you get them in drop back passing situations? That's the issue. But before we move on to defense, Eric, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, the last thing I'd say is I agree with you that the coaching staff for the Eagles will be harping on all these things they messed up in the run fits, especially. So I think they're going to play the edges extremely aggressively, which will open them up to misdirection plays. So the counter runs and the jet sweep to the opposite, or like the opposite side reverse plays like this, that's probably where I think they'll get hurt in this game, unless they don't fix what they had trouble with against the Falcons.
Now, jumping to this defense, though, this defense is pretty good on its own. They're led by Dennis Allen, who is also the head coach, and he's entering as the 10th year as this team's coordinator. And before I go any further, I just have to stop and say that this system, you can tell that it's been in place and they've been running the same system for several years. They are smooth. Everyone knows their spots and where they're supposed to be. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I just have to say there's a clear difference in watching this defense on tape versus watching the Eagles right now. It's a clear difference in one team learning a defense and one team that's mastering and executing their defense at a top level. But they have good players at all three levels. Cam Jordan at edge, Demario Davis at linebacker, Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, at safety, and Marshawn Lattimore at corner. They're borderline top 10 in most categories last year, statistically, and they're off to a hot start again this year. They're 4th in points per game allowed, 7th in yards per game allowed, and 3rd in EPA per play allowed. So, Eric, what did you see from this Saints defense?
Yeah, once again, they're another team that defense is structured somewhat similarly to the Eagles, using a lot of match zone coverages, a lot of single high post snap, cover 3, cover 6. Really trying to disguise what you're trying to do pre-snap by showing like the same vanilla looks. One thing I'll note is they were amongst the league leaders in running stunts and also putting dime out there. And for people who remember our off-season podcast, We speculated that Fangio might lean into dime because that's where the strength of the team was. So far, that hasn't materialized, especially with their injuries. But the Saints have. They have a ton of good defensive backs, and now they're potentially getting Marshawn Lattimore out there. So when it's even remotely close to a passing down, there's a decent chance they're trotting out 6 defensive backs. And yeah, we'll get more into who those guys are. But yeah, that's what you can expect from their scheme.
Yeah. Very similar to the Eagles. They're different in a couple ways, but they're similar in a lot of ways. You touched on it. They're really a single high dominant team. And here's the difference. They're both of these guys, both these teams run single high coverage over 60% clip so far to start the year. Now, some of that could be variance on the teams that they're playing, and that's why the numbers are like that. But they both use split safety looks as well. But the Eagles play a lot more cover 3 in their single high look and use cover 6 as their split safety look. The Saints use more cover 1 as their single high look, and then they use more cover 2 as their split safety look. So there's some differences there. But the Saints use cover 2 so much that as a changeup that you really have to be prepared for it. They run it a good amount. It's only about, I want to say, close to about 20% clip. It's one of the highest in the league, though. So you do have to be prepared that they are going to use it. It's not like they run it, at a 5 to 10% clip. When they are using cover 2, they stuff inside gaps and try to spill the ball to second level defenders because they often play a gap down and the run fits because they're playing with the 2 high safeties. That's not how Fangio fits the run with his 2 high safety looks. He fits where they're always gapped out. Well, I should say 95% of the time they're gapped out. So there is some differences there. But for that reason, if you notice they're in cover 2, trying to pound the ball up the middle might not be the best plan going against these guys. So just something to pay attention to. Their third down pressures, they use a lot of overload fronts, a lot of boss fronts. Essentially what you're doing is you're putting 3 of your defensive linemen on one side of the center, and you're really trying to manipulate protection packages that way. And that's where you see a lot of their stunts. They run stunts out of other formations too, but you'll see a lot of stunts on third down with that. They'll have other times where they'll walk everyone up to the line of scrimmage. Sometimes they'll drop everyone out. Sometimes they'll bring everyone. They don't blitz a ton, but they get pretty exotic with the blitzes that they do bring. And then they'll bring some other pressures out of their base nickel front where it's an overload blitz where they send 2 guys through the B gap. So the offense will need to be prepared with their protection plan to stop that. So much so, Alontae Taylor, as their slot corner, had 3 sacks from one of these blitzes. But overall, they're very good with their tackling and run fits, their leverage, their formation and route combination recognition, and their communication overall. Like the things you were talking about, what makes a good defense. They are good at the execution and the fundamental aspect of it. But Eric, did you have any thoughts in terms of the game plan on how you might want to attack this defense?
Yeah, I think they should try to test their defensive backs deep down the field. The way the Saints like to play fairly aggressively, often getting their safeties playing up near the line of scrimmage. You have those opportunities one-on-one deep down the field. Now, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be without A.J. Brown, who's the best option to exploit this kind of thing. But Devontae Smith is also awesome down the field. So I hope they do try to attack them down the field. If they go into the game, if people will remember in the Falcons game, especially early on in the game, they were taking very quick plays to the flats and bubbles with like Covey and Dotson and Barkley just getting the ball out ultra quick, and it wasn't getting that many yards. That's not going to work sustainably against the Saints. They are so good at rallying. They tackle really well. Like you mentioned, they have a bunch of veterans and they play aggressively. You need to be able to stretch them vertically. So I hope they do that because they dare you to beat them over the top. And if you don't try to, it's going to be tough sledding. Well, how about you? What do you think is a good way to attack them?
Yeah, I think you probably do want to run at this team a little bit more, especially add in, listen, they're good in all facets of defense, right? So it's hard to pick where am I going to attack specifically this defense. I agree there's certain spots you can try and take your shots passing the ball. Just knowing where the Eagles are at offensively, AJ Brown out, learning this new system or blending this new system in with Kellen Moore, I think turning into more of a run dominant team in general is where this team should be heading anyway. So I think trying to run the ball is at a higher clip is going to be what I would try to do. But I will add in some more specific stuff. Talking about some of the fronts that we talked about in their pressure packages, I would use a 4-man slide to their overload front, because then you can have enough guys to be able to handle and pick up their twist and stunt games. But the Saints, if you're going to do that, they will blitz their linebackers as a result and try and take advantage of their running back and pass pro. Luckily, the Eagles have Saquon Barkley as one of the best pass protecting running backs in the league. If it was Gainwell back there, I'd probably do a 3-man slide if the Saints showed they were going to blitz that linebacker. So just a thought there. Talking about how much they use cover 2, you're going to have your base plays that are good against everything or good against certain coverages or good against most coverages that you're going to run. You're going to have your schemed up looks, your play action rollout plays, whatnot. But a lot of your plays, you tag different concepts, right? So one side of the field might have one concept tag to it. The other side might have another concept tag to it. I think the Eagles need to have half-field concepts on a good amount of their drop-back passing game. So you can have a cover 2 side, and then you can have a single high side. So when you read post-snap that they've rotated to a certain coverage, you can then look to your side of the field and attack your coverage beater. I think they can beat cover 2 with smash concepts. I think Kellen Moore in the past has also done a good job attacking the pole runner, which is the middle linebacker that you see running up the middle of the field to kind of take away that void in the middle of the field and cover 2. A lot of times they'll run a vertical stem at that linebacker and then he'll just stop. So you'll run a curl route at that guy. Opens up a lot of space. And then there's times where Kellen Moore will just challenge that seam defender and just throw at that linebacker with the seam route down the middle of the field. That's actually how Jalen threw the interception in week 1, his first one. I would not do that on 3rd and 15. That's probably not the time to take that shot. I'd also be very careful with slot option routes. They will jump those routes, especially out of empty formations. They're very good at understanding how you like to attack. The Eagles like to attack with Devontae in the slot. Instead, I would run stick routes from the number 3 receiver detached from the formation. I'll throw up a clip of what I'm talking about on YouTube. Take the checkdowns. They will be available. Sometimes you are going to have to dink and dunk down the field with these guys, and then take your shots when they are there, because there will be some matchups where you can take your shots against these guys. They're good with their disguise. Use motion and formation alignment to help identify the coverage, but you have to be very good with your post-snap processing, because they will change the picture up on you post-snap. With the motions, last thing real quick, with the motions, jet sweeps, they travel with the motion at times. So you might finally see a situation where we finally hand the ball off on the jet sweep. We haven't seen that yet. So I think those are some things that they can do offensively to attack this defense. Did you have anything else to add before we jump into some of these player matchups to watch out for?
Yeah, I think one of the things is a lot of times they'll leave the middle of the field pretty empty and just kind of let Demario Davis roam there, which, yeah, his instincts and IQ are off the charts. But he's 35 years old, I think, right? He's like 35 years old. Yeah. If he's not already traveling in a straight line towards the direction he needs to be, he can easily be beaten across his face. So I would try to use plays like you mentioned, jet sweeps, or even pony personnel, like we saw in the first game with Shipley motioning out to kind of get the middle of the field pretty naked, and then try to beat Davis across his face. I think you'd have some success doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And then also in trips when they're in cover 2, a lot of times Davis doesn't widen out with, like, if you're throwing a swing route to the flat, he doesn't widen out. You can get a 2-on-1, or excuse me, a 3-on-2 situation there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Eagles tack with like a quick swing route to the flat if they notice that the Saints are in cover 2. Moving on to player matchups, I guess we can start with Demario Davis since we've talked about him. He is a 35-year-old linebacker with over 1,200 career tackles, 43 career sacks. He's a 5-time All-Pro, and he was second-team All-Pro last year. So yes, he is 35. He is still a very good linebacker. He is a great all-around linebacker. rushing the passer, in coverage, tackling, block shedding, run defense. The Saints really do a good job of kind of keeping them clean, especially when they're playing in cover two and using when they're down a gap. They kind of clog the middle of the defensive line and then spill everything to the sideline. He cleans up a lot of those plays, but this guy is going to be around the ball a lot. You're going to hear his name a lot. Do you have any thoughts to add about Demario Davis?
You know, in previous years, I hadn't watched him that much. You just hear anecdotally how good he is, but it's not like the Eagles are playing them twice a year. And now in preparation for this podcast, I watched quite a bit of him, and he is just unbelievable. I can't believe that he can play at this level at 35. We've seen the drop off from Bobby Wagner, but there's not much of a drop off from Davis. He's covering running backs on wheel routes. You mentioned all the things he's good at. I'll throw in he's actually still good at blitzing. He'll come up the middle, blow up the linebacker, and get in the quarterback's face. One thing I'll note about how he plays, which I really like to see, is he's very slow to commit himself. So after the snap, it's almost like his feet are stuck in cement for a second, and you're like, what's going on? And he's just processing. Here's what I think they're going to do based off their formation, their personnel package, my film study, all this kind of stuff, my reading my keys. But let me confirm if that's true once the ball's actually snapped. So he's sitting there, he's buffering, he goes, okay, I was right. Boom. Then he's so fast into action. This allows him not to kind of overplay a lot of plays. It allows him to make up for other guys' mistakes. Like the Eagles, if one of their guys abandons their gap, their defensive lineman, our linebackers are not patching those holes. Davis is. So the way he kind of just methodically plays, it's just a very, it's eye candy for football fans. And yeah, like you mentioned, he's someone that you definitely have to key on each snap.
Yeah, and what you're talking about there really shows up well, or it's really highlighted when they're playing cover two because they're playing down a gap. So he's two gapping as a linebacker. He has to be patient, but he's so good at flowing with the ball and knowing when the running back's cutting back and when he needs to get back to fall back a gap. He's really good at that stuff. He's perfect for the system that the Saints are running. Now, looking at the defensive line, Cam Jordan at edge rusher. He is a two-time All-Pro. He had a fourth-place finish and the Defensive Player of the Year standings at one point in his career. He is 35, but he's still bringing value to the Saints at his ripe old age. He is the size of a defensive tackle, a smaller defensive tackle, but he's the size of a defensive tackle. And you can really see the difference when you have an edge defender of his size and what it can do for you in the run game. As good as Nolan Smith is as a run defender, he has to give ground to be a good run defender, especially when he's going against offensive tackles. When Cam Jordan's going against offensive tackles, he knocks them back. He constricts gaps. He constricts space, right? That's just something that you're not getting from any of the Eagles edge defenders, really outside of Josh Sweat and to a degree Brandon Graham as well. But Cam Jordan's just a really good run defender as an edge rusher. He's really a premier run defender, and he's a guy that I reference a lot when talking about the best run defenders at edge rusher in the league.
Real quick on Jordan. Yeah, it's amazing to watch. Sometimes you'll watch college film of like a senior who's physically dominant and he's just bullying like these Pac-12 offensive linemen. At times, Jordan does that in the NFL. And it's amazing. He's a man amongst men. So yeah, just to build off what you said, he's quite the talent. Now, I don't know necessarily how he's wired. I feel like maybe he could have been even better than he has ended up being based off like his frame and his natural talent. But yeah, he's playing at a really high level.
Yeah, he's still an excellent player. Now in the pass game, he lines up on lane side, but will rush inside on third down. So something to pay attention to. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to the game plan scenario. Carl Granderson is their edge rusher. He rushes mainly over Lane Johnson. He's a solid pass rusher. He's 18th in pressure rate in the league so far this year. I would say he's similar to like a Josh Sweat in terms of his level of play, but he's not beating Lane, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Chase Young versus Jordan Mailata. That is going to be a matchup to watch, but I will say this. We saw this matchup play out last year twice against the Commanders. Uh, Chase had a little bit of success with him in the first game. I'd say Mailata got the better of him in the second game. And even in the first game, I felt like he handled him for a lot of the reps. There were just a couple bad reps here and there. I don't think Chase Young's going to wreck the game, though. I think he'll have a few pressures. He'll beat Mailata on a play or two. Hopefully, it just ends up as a pressure and not a sack. But I don't think it's going to be something where it turns into a game-wrecking situation. Um, Looking at the interior of their defensive line, none of these guys really scare me in terms of their pass rush. Their starter, Kalen Saunders, is injured, hasn't played this year. It looks like he's probably not going to play this week either. But their guys, Brian Brissy, who was drafted in the first round last year, and Nathan Shepard, I think you can run at those guys. I think you can run them off the ball, especially with this offensive line. I'm not all that worried about this group. It's the edge defenders I think are really good run defenders. We talked about Demario Davis at linebacker. Looking at Pete Warner, he's our other linebacker. He's athletic, versatile. He's rangy in the run and pass game. He will rotate and shift to the edge pre-snap as well, kind of like we talked about with Bond after game one and with Caden Ellis last week. He's just an all-around good player. Now, moving on to corners, Marshawn Lattimore. I don't know if he's going to play this week. He's dealing with a hamstring injury as of this recording. 2 practices in, he's been limited at both practices. Not really what you see from a guy that's going to play with a hamstring injury on Sunday. If he does play, I'll say this about Lattimore. I don't think he is a shutdown corner, but I think he's a lockdown corner. I think he's one of the better corners in the league. But I don't think he's, when you hear the term like shutdown, I feel like there's only a few people that's given to. I'd say he's more of a lockdown corner. He will give you hell all day long. He'll get beat sometimes because that's what happens playing corner, but he is a very good corner. I wonder, will he travel with Smitty if he does play? If that is the case, the Eagles are going to need to be a little creative to make life easier for Smitty, although I think Devontae can win on his own against Lattimore at times as well. That would be a fun matchup to watch, though. Looking at some of their other guys, I would really try and target Paulson Adebo. He was 112th in yards per target in 2023. He was he got beat a couple times against the Cowboys. He did have an interception, but it was on a play where he probably actually got beat, but the receiver fell down right in front of him. The ball just was gifted to him. So I think he's a guy I'd go after. Same with Delonte Taylor. I wouldn't be scared to go after him either. He was 82nd in yards per target in 2023. But what do you have to say about any of the guys that I just mentioned?
Yeah, in previous years, Adebo was very suspect. Early on, he's had success, but teams still want to target him. In fact, over the first 2 weeks, I think he was targeted more than any other corner, like in the entire NFL. And as you mentioned, CeeDee Lamb had him beat for a touchdown. It was just classic Dak airmail. So I do want to test Adebo deep, especially because he likes to kind of cheat. He'll sit on routes underneath, and he's a lankier corner, so he'll trust his length to kind of make up for it if a guy is stacking him to try to like bat it away. But I like Devontae's chances of high pointing it in those kind of scenarios. Now, I'm not going to test him deep with like Dotson. I don't think that would be successful. And then Taylor, I agree with you that he can definitely be victimized in pass coverage, but my gosh, this guy's physical play, on quick hitters to the flats and run plays especially, it's just amazing to watch how much of a difference a physical nickel can make. There's snaps where he's blowing the receiver back 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. The guy's not even ready for it because he's never seen a corner who plays this aggressively. And then the entire run basically gets fizzles out because there's a receiver like blocked back into where the running back's trying to go. He'll fly across the field and make tackles. He's the kind of guy that the Eagles would benefit tremendously from because of just that, how physical he plays. In fact, it's the whole defense. They're flying around the field. They tackle really well. They don't let you have anything easy. So yeah, I really like Taylor's game, but like you mentioned, you get him ISO'd against one of our quicker slot guys, I think you can have success there.
Yeah, and you mentioned just them flying around, being a physical team. They're playing like a physical, confident team that knows its defense, and maybe no one more so than the guy on the back end and the honey badger, Tyron Matthew. Jalen is gonna need to be aware of where this guy is, just like he was with Jesse Bates. Even though that slipped his mind on the last play of the game, he needs to be aware of where Tyron Matthew is. This guy is a 3-time All Pro, 34 career interceptions, 6 forced fumbles. He's a super instinctual player. He made a number of plays in the Cowboys game that were just they're they're teach tape plays, or they're plays where you just can't really coach. Like he broke up an out route as a middle post safety. He broke up a deep out route outside of the numbers as a middle post safety. How often does that happen? After he saved a big play for the Saints defense because the Cowboys finally manipulated a coverage bust, and then you have Tyron Matthew coming and abandoning the middle post to save the play. I mean, it's just plays like that that it's the difference between these Pro Bowl, all pro caliber players and your average players who are still good players, but there's just a tier difference with these guys. I will say this though, he is smaller and can be boxed out, especially once you start getting to the red zone. Is this something where maybe we can get Dallas Goddard matched up against him and kind of box him out there? So we'll have to see. Do you have any thoughts on Honey Badger?
Well, yeah, because it seemed like he similar to Kamara. It seemed like they were kind of on the downside of their career and gonna retire fairly shortly. And then you put on week 1 and 2, and you're like, oh, whoa, they're back to their prime. So my question about that is, will that continue throughout the season? Will their age start to catch up to them week 12 playoffs? Um, that remains to be seen. But I'm very impressed. Especially you watch the Eagles guys who are 23 years old and they're looking gassed in the first quarter. And then you watch Tyron Matthews, like in his 30s now, like you mentioned, guarding a sail route as the middle post safety, covering like 25 yards of grass. So it's amazing. Yeah, so I think they look like a really well coached team. They have much, like as you mentioned, much more continuity than the Eagles, and we're playing them week 3. So a lot of that adds up to be a tall task.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough game for sure. Now, I did want to mention a couple more game plans, specific things, based on some of the matchups. When the Eagles are in their standard, or excuse me, when the Saints are in their standard 4 down fronts on pass downs, so third downs or second and long, when Cam Jordan slides inside to rush over one of the guards, I would slide the line towards Cam Jordan, and then whichever side it is, it doesn't matter to me because the other defensive tackles don't scare me enough against either of our matchups to say I have to slide the line to Becton and leave Dickerson on an island. So I would slide to Cam Jordan unless you're getting indicators that you might be getting a blitz from that side of the field, or you start to see the Saints see what you're doing and then start manipulating uh, or start taking advantage of the protection. I'll add to that as well with if Marshawn Lattimore plays and he does start shadowing Devontae, especially on third downs on your gotta have it downs when when you do typically go to your go-to guys, and that will be Devontae in this game on pass downs. Try and get him some easier matchups using condensed bunch and stack alignments that puts Lattimore at disadvantageous leverages, and then also pair it with motion to help out with that as well, and try and give Smitty a better opportunity to succeed. He can on his own right if you were to just go line him up and say, go play Lattimore one-on-one. But what's going to give you a higher percentage chance of being successful? I think bunched looks, stack looks from condensed sets, pair it with motion. I think that can help Smitty out on third downs. Did you have anything else to add game plan wise, or just final thoughts about this game going in?
I have a fun little stat that I found, which is CJ Gardner Johnson. If you go back to the NFC Championship that he played in for the Lions, he's missed 8 of his last 13 tackles. And according to Next Gen Stats, this is one of the worst stretches of tackling in NFL history. So, and that now he came down with an injury. It looks like it was not that serious and he'll play, but this is something that needs to be fixed quickly. He comes in way over aggressive. He's sliding feet first, trying to latch on to people. We noted that it's been a problem in his career. Now he's playing in the box coming up and he cracks Bijan in the hole. That's where he's good. So I have a off the wall thing I'll throw at you, see what you think, is what if they tried to move him more into the slot role where we've seen him have success at times, and then they try to find someone else to play safety? Is that something that's viable, or is it kind of like too late in the season to do something like this?
No, and especially when you know that, listen, Fangio likes to play nickel packages even against like 12 personnel, right? So that means your nickel is going to be in run fits. So especially when Sidney Brown gets back, my thought is Sidney Brown would probably go and be the big nickel on early downs. Maybe it is CJ. Maybe you put CJ and then Sidney can play as the deep safety. I wouldn't be opposed to situations and personnel packages where you throw him out there for some of the snaps throughout the game. I don't think it's going to be like a permanent situation. But here's the thing with CJ. He was a slot corner for the first 3 years of his career where he played in the slot exclusively. So it's not like he can't do it. And especially knowing that Fangio is running a ton of zone coverage and a lot of spot drop zone coverage. Those are the same coverages that you run as a safety anyways, playing the hook zones or rotating down and playing a flat zone. A lot of it's the same coverages anyways. You're just playing it top down versus playing it from bottom up. So I could see that being something that they try out. Listen, Fangio's got to figure out how to best use his personnel. He's learning this team as well. So maybe he learns this is the best use of the personnel and what he's got to work with. So we'll see. We'll see about this game though, because I am a little concerned. I really don't project a win, especially when you see they were 3-point favorites and turned into, at last time I looked, 2.5-point underdogs. That doesn't generally flip that big and that quickly, especially without a major like quarterback injury. So I think that's telling you what the markets are feeling. I'm sure most Eagles fans aren't that confident either. I'm a little concerned, but what I want to see is progress, steps in the right direction from the things that were issues last week. Even if they don't win this game, is there some glimmer of hope that these guys are getting better with their run fits? That guys are missing less tackles and blowing less assignments? That's something I'm really hoping to see. But make sure to like, subscribe, and until next time, go Birds.